Good evening, everyone. Seems like only yesterday when we started our Trends Literature series. And in fact, today in our 91st episode, we have none other than Shrabani Basu with us. She joined us all the way from London. She's a London based author, historian, and a journalist. In fact, her books include Victoria and Abdul, the extraordinary true story of the Queen's closest confidant, now a major motion picture, Spy Princess, the life of Noor Inayat Khan, and for King in Another Country, Indian soldiers on the Western Front, 1914-1918. In fact, in 2010, she set up the Noor Inayat Khan Memorial Trust and campaigned for a memorial for the Second World War heroine, which was unveiled by none other than Princess Anne in London in November 2012. So absolutely a delight to welcome you today, Shrabani, on our platform.
Well, thank you. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'll delve into the conversation straight away. The mystery of Parsee Lawyer is definitely inspired from a chapter of history, which is set against the backdrop of racism, empire, definitely a forgotten chapter of history. So why do the forgotten figures of history fascinate you enough to write about?
Well, yeah, as you can see from all my books, I always love digging out these, characters who've been forgotten by history and then bringing them, but who have played an important part in events that have happened. So, Victoria and Abdul, nobody knew about Abdul Karim, and yet he was such a crucial part of Queen Victoria's rule. The last 13 years taught her Urdu, and all these things that nobody knew have now come to light. Then, of course, Spy Princess, which is, one of the books closest to my heart, about Noor Inayat Khan, who was a secret agent. I think there is something about these people and their stories they tell that, just attract me. So I'm always on the lookout for a different story. I think it's the journalist in me. I'm always looking for something different. And, I guess the historian and the journalist work together.
No, I must say that's a deadly combination because you've been a journalist par excellence. And I think you've always been used to coming up with very interesting stories. So combining it with your writing makes it a very, very interesting read. And I really recommend this book to everyone. They should definitely read it. And I couldn't really put it down when I started reading this book. Congratulations on a very, very well-written book, which has been published by Bloomsbury. The mystery of the Parsee Lawyer, the real-life Sherlock Holmes mystery involving an Indian, will definitely appeal to mystery lovers worldwide. So what was so inspirational and intriguing that you wrote about George Adalji and you chose to write about him? So what really interested you about him?
Well, I'm one of those mystery lovers. So I'm a real fan of Arthur Conan Doyle. I love my Christie's. I love sitting, reading Sherlock Holmes mystery anytime, just to relax and unwind, reread these books again, watch them on TV as well. But so for me, as I said, I'm always looking for something different. And when I heard that Arthur Conan Doyle, the only case that he investigates personally, wearing the hat of Sherlock Holmes, is to do with an Indian, it was like, it was just waiting for me to get in there and do this story, find out more, find out what happened. And so, in keeping with the mystery, I sort of called it the mystery of the Parsee Lawyer as a sort of homage to Arthur Conan Doyle as well. Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, the title itself is, enough to, let you pick up the book and find out more about it. So the title itself seems straight out of Sherlock Holmes tales. So how did you choose the title and the cover? That's interesting as well. That gives you that old look, the old feel about the whole story, and you immediately go back into that time period.
Yeah. Well, the title is mine, but the cover is all due credit to Bloomsbury, to their design team, and they came up with this. And it was fantastic because, when you're thinking of books that involve two people, sort of biographies, you always look at the picture of the person. You expect, the picture of either George Adalji or Arthur Conan Doyle to be on the cover. And I think this was just thinking out of the box. This has the cover of the policeman walking in this village. And immediately, I think you get the sense of the period. This is the Edwardian era. This is happening in 1903, turn of the century. I don't know, you just plunge into it straight away. And well, that's the book. It's a little mystery set in a village, and things happen just like all Christie's and Holmes novels are. It's very Christie in that sense.
No, no, it's definitely a great treat for everyone who's into mystery and mystery lovers. You know how Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes, helped a Parsee lawyer, George Adalji, clear his name after being convicted for the crime of animal mutilation. This is how the story is.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely, the real line plot definitely intrigues and fascinates one and all. So, but why do you think Conan Doyle he took up this case? Because
Well,
that's the I read the book and I read even the very interesting introduction that you put in, but
mhm.
for everyone present today I would like
Yeah,
you to tell
of
them why
course.
did he take up this case, what was so
Yeah.
interesting that he felt
Yeah. So
so
I'll
close about.
actually, for those who don't know what the book is about, I'll just, sort of give a line about the book. It's set in 1903 in a small village near Birmingham. The village is Great Worley. And George Adalji, who is our principal character, he is a lawyer. He works in Birmingham. He is a lawyer. And his father is Shapurji Adalji, who's come from Bombay. And he was a Parsee. He's converted to Christianity, and he's the vicar of this little church. So you can imagine this is a village setting where this brown vicar is preaching to an all-white English parish. So it's going to be trouble. This starts in the Victorian period, it spills over into Edwardian. But finally, to cut to the chase, what happens to George Adalji is that a series of mutilations, animal mutilations, happen in the village. All of a sudden, horses are being slashed, cows are being slashed. It's a gruesome crime, and they're all being left outside, left in the fields to die. And of course, the police are totally ineffective. They cannot find who is doing this. Somebody's coming in the dead of night and killing these animals. And, rumor, fear, what happens when all these go around? Who do you suspect? The only brown family in this village, this odd family that sticks out. The father is a Parsee, speaks with an Indian accent, holds the service every Sunday. His son is he's very quiet, he's shy, he just goes to Birmingham. He's a bit odd in the sense that he keeps to himself. He's dark skinned, he stands out. So obviously, all suspicion, various things happen, and they fall on George Adalji, who has nothing to do with animals, no history of, he said he's never
Yes, so
even
right.
touched a horse, totally different life. But then he's accused, he's arrested, and he's imprisoned. The trial happens, he's imprisoned. And when he's released on parole, he can't practice as a solicitor. He has no means of livelihood. He doesn't know what to do. So he writes, he picks up his pen, all credit to him. Who thinks of writing to, the greatest writer of the time? He writes to Arthur Conan Doyle and he says, help me clear my name. Only Sherlock Holmes can do this. And Arthur Conan Doyle, to answer your second question now, is why does he take this? Well, first of all, Conan Doyle is going through a difficult phase in his life at this time. His wife has died 6 months ago. They had a long, loving marriage. She died of tuberculosis, so he's really upset. But he's also feeling very guilty because while he was taking care of his wife, Tui, he's fallen in love again. He's fallen in love with a young woman, and now he's free to marry her. So he's having all these conflicting emotions because, he feels, was I, wishing Louis would die and I could marry Jean. And so all this conflict is going on. And he's in a very dark space, very much like Sherlock Holmes. His created, fictional detective is often in a very dark space. So, all those who read Holmes, they know that he's often starting out, he's playing the violin, he's, taking heroin, he's injecting him, he's doing all these things till his mystery arrives. Well, Arthur Conan Doyle is not doing all this. Obviously, he's not taking drugs, but he was in a dark space. And suddenly this letter arrives. And here's a chance to do something. It's a distraction. In a way, he says it's a welcome distraction from the troubles of the past. And suddenly he wants to be somebody who supports the downtrodden. There's been a miscarriage of justice. And Arthur Conan Doyle says, I'm going to rise to this. I'm going to correct this wrong. This is, It's a challenge for him. It's taking on the system, and he takes it on. So there we are.
Yes, I'm sure, the synopsis that you've given is definitely motivating enough to go and pick up the book. Coming to this about your writing this book, I read somewhere that, Julian Barnes, he also wrote a book on
Mhm.
the same storyline, Arthur and George before you.
Yes,
So
yes.
what, I'm sure when you were writing and when you came to know that this book is already being written by somebody
Mhm.
else and it is
Mhm.
going to be published before you, but you still decided to go ahead with the book. So what was the inspiration which really drove you to pursue your interest on George Adalji stories
Mhm.
still? Because I'm sure you've come out with a different perspective and more detailed one and more
Mhm.
interesting.
Well, of course. So when Julian Barnes, I mean, I'd always wanted to write about George, but I was busy with my other books, so I hadn't had the time. And then I heard that Julian Barnes had written a book, and he's a novelist I really admire. I love his work. So I said, "Oh dear, he's done it. It's fiction, but he's done it." So I actually dropped working on it. But it used to always, be at the back of my head. I want to get into this story. I want to find out what happened because I do nonfiction. So
Mm.
it's very different from, fictionalizing things. I wanted to get into the files. I wanted to get into the police files. Also, I wanted to find out about his father, Shapurji. What made him convert? What was his journey from, Bombay, from being a wealthy Parsee, to convert to Christianity as a teenager, come here, and then, think you're in a civilized country and then face racism and miscarriage of justice. So there's a lot going on. And for me, I like to see the whole thing in a, broader historical perspective. And well, so the main thing that happened that sort of made me decide was in 2015, because I read an article in the Times newspaper, and it said that certain letters of Arthur Conan Doyle were going to be auctioned. And these were to do with the George Adalji case. And they'd never been seen. Obviously, nobody had seen them before. They were from the police officer's private collection. And I said, there's going to be, the journalist in me said there's going to be material in there. And
Yes.
so I was in, I sort of followed the auction. I actually prayed and I said, oh, please let it not go into private hands. Please let somebody buy it where, it's available to the public. And it was. So luckily, it was bought by Portsmouth Library. And the minute I knew that, I just said, okay, I need to see these boxes. And they were still classifying the material, but there were boxes. I think there were about 6 to 8 boxes. And oh God, that was the start of it. But of course, it's never one source. When I write my books, there are multiple sources. So I went to a lot of other archives.
Yes, because you really do a lot of research work, and as we just discussed a little earlier, that is the journalist in you makes you
Mhm.
write what you do. So I mean, from the story that how you got about writing this book. Initially, you were considering not to maybe pursue it. So, what is the inspiration? I mean, I feel it's very inspiring. So, what do you think is the underlying inspirational message for the budding writers in this? That if you have a subject and if you feel
Mhm.
somebody else is writing it still, so I mean, what would you like to kind of tell them? That pursue your passion, pursue your dream, definitely be
Yeah.
convinced about your subject.
Mhm.
Yes.
I think so. I think everyone brings a different take to a particular event or a person's character. So if that's a passion for you and it's a story you want to follow, do it. I mean, why do filmmakers keep, remaking old films? Because they feel, Steven Spielberg wants to really do West Side Story. It's a classic, but then he does it again. Why? Because he feels, he wants to bring his own creativity into it, tell it his way. So I think this has been happening forever. But yeah, I mean, if there's a story you want to follow, of just believe in yourself and go for it. What I did do is, because I had read Arthur and George when it came out, which is 2005. So all the details over the years were a bit blurry anyway. I didn't touch it after that, so I didn't want it to influence me in any way. I had read it, I knew it was there, and it's on my bookshelf, but I didn't touch it at all. And after I'd finished my book, then I got panicky, actually. And I said, what if, sometimes two people have the same idea for a for a beginning of a novel, or the beginning of a book. So that made me a little panicky. And I said, oh God, suppose, no one's going to believe me if I say I had the same idea, and it already, you better confirm. So I just opened the opening, the first few lines of his book after all those years. And then I closed it and I said, thank God, it's done. We have a totally different take on where this is going to start. So it was fine. But there was a brief moment of panic. Nothing would have happened if I found that we were both opening in the same way, which is very unlikely because I do nonfiction. I would change it. But there we were perfectly okay.
Lovely. And I must announce to everybody, there's a chance that you can win this book today. There's a quiz giveaway of this wonderful book. I'll give you one question and you please answer. Rather, there are two questions and I hope you're able to answer that. So whosoever, this is like fastest finger first. So when did Arthur Conan Doyle, the wonderful author behind Sherlock Holmes, pass away? You can give me a nearest year. So the first person to answer will win this book, and I'll declare the name of the winners at the end of the session. So do write in your answers in the chat and wait for the second question as well. Thank you. There can be only one winner for one book, by the way.
How many are you giving away?
Two.
Book. Two books. Okay.
I think somebody is already answering. So.
Oh, well, get in there.
Yeah. So, in the introduction, you've really mentioned in a very, very engaging manner, how did you really follow the story of George Darji? I have read it. I would like you to share that, in which you took that famous train journey, you went through it all. And it was fascinating, filled with, I could also feel that you were going in that and I'm sure it must be very, 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 very inspiring and very interesting for you to go through the entire journey and then writing that book.
I did. I had to, something of you has to come into the book as to what is driving you. And and I, as the journalist in me, so there's a historian in me, which is happy in the archives, digging out, all this material. And for that, you have to have a certain amount of training to be able to find all this material in different archives. But the strong side to me, the other side is my journalist side. So I have to go to the spot. I cannot just do something sitting in an archive and thinking about it. So I had to go. So very much like Arthur Conan Doyle, I had to go to the scene of crime. You've got to go there. So I had to go see the vicarage, which is still there. I had to take these trains, which still run, the small branch lines from Birmingham, reminding you of all those little trains that run in India, on the, smaller tracks. So you just sit there and you think this train used to run over 100 years ago. The countryside is exactly the same. Some changes, obviously, in the built up areas, but mostly open fields with the horses still standing there. And you do feel this. So I went on a journey with not just George Adalji, trying to find out what his life was like, but also the journey is also tracking how Arthur Conan Doyle investigates this, how he is finding this evidence and what he is doing. So it was, two journeys happening. And I hope, the reader goes with me on this, trying to find out, oh my goodness, what's happening now? And there are so many plot twists, which I was discovering as I was researching, because, I don't know the whole story. When I went into the police files, I won't give away too much, but the stuff I found there was amazing. Yes. So, what the police get up to, how they actually start laying false trails for Arthur Conan Doyle, what happens? None of this has ever been discussed because these were totally private papers. And so I followed all this and, finally, I hope, got a narrative without confusing my reader too much. And there it is. There was the book. I had to cut out a lot, but, that's always you always feel that you need to then sort of, you've got so much material. I couldn't move in my study. This took 5 years, this book. Mm-hmm. So my study was just stacks and stacks of papers from every archive, police files, home office files, just name it, they were there. Then the old files about Shapurji. And then you have to distill it into a story, a narrative, So yeah, it's challenging.
How much was it different from your other books that you've written till now? In fact, this is a question from Dia. She wants to know that how was it different from writing your non-fiction books and then a fiction book?
No, so this isn't fiction either. This is also not
This is
fiction.
sorry, this is
Yeah, no, but this is different from the others. So I've done two
Sorry.
books on the wars. So I did a
Yes.
biography of Nur Inayat Khan, which is the Second World War. I did a book on the Indian soldiers in the First World War. That's very different. So I think each book has a different subject. And then I went into royalty, which is, Victorian. Abdul was a totally different look at, what is going on in the royal palaces. So again, it's a different line of inquiry. And this was police files. I had never looked, I've looked at intelligence files. I have looked at royalty files. I've looked at viceroy's papers. I've looked at a lot of historical stuff, but I had never gone into a single case and looked at police files. So that's what was different in this. I really enjoyed it. It was very, very, it revealed so much. And then what struck me is that so much of this racism that happened then is still there now. We still have these cases, with police framing somebody, police just, just arresting somebody because of the color of their skin. It's happening all the time. There are reports about this. I mean, not just in UK, we know what happened. While I was writing this,
Yes.
Black Lives Matter exploded around the world. We had George Floyd. So it's like this is happening still 100 years later and probably will go on because, we haven't found the solutions. So there was this thing that it is still so relevant, though these are old events.
There's another question from Babita Batra. She says that what kind of racism did George Adalji take up?
Oh, a lot. Yeah. So the book, so when they are young, the racism, I mean, I don't want to give away too much, but the racism starts when he is just a boy. He's just 12 years old and his father is facing it. So it's directed at the vicar because, as I said, this is the brown vicar in this all white village. And it may not have happened if he was in a London parish. I don't know, where there are more, mixed race people. But in this tiny English village, which was just completely white, working class, it was very different. So, yes, they faced enormous racism. The whole book is about how, they face anonymous letters when they are young. There's hoaxes, there's threats, there's all this. And then finally, when this second series of crimes start, that's when immediately they are targeted. And I have the police. So as a journalist, I'm always interested in what the newspapers are saying. How are they reporting this case? And of course, they're all writing about the dark Oriental air of mystery, secrets, a strange religion. These words keep coming out. So it's very obvious that every reference to George Adalji is always to do with the color of his skin, his ethnic background, Parsee. They think this is a strange religion. The villagers think that maybe Parsees worship the sun and the moon, so they go out into the night to sacrifice animals. Completely, uninformed, miseducated. But there you are. These are the rumors that float around, and it's to do with all these, the literature of the day as well. You see, which used to portray Indians as either mutineers or thugs, and they're stealing jewels or they're having a revolt. Especially all the mutiny novels that happened. So this is the impression of Indians, strange race, including Arthur Conan Doyle, who also has, is guilty of the same. I mean, so it's not just Rudyard Kipling, it's also Arthur Conan Doyle. His own novels have put India in this framework. But it's, so this is the mindset, and the media are going with this. So there's so much prejudice. The 12 members of the jury, all men, all white, would have just, took to some, no time at all to just declare him guilty. Though there was no evidence, it would not have stood, that evidence would not have stood in any court of law. It wouldn't even have been admitted into court. So it is true crime. It is also miscarriage of justice and a lot that goes on in this. But also an interesting trail, because then you have Arthur Conan Doyle. So it's not all gloom and doom. It's this man, the greatest writer, championing this. So there's a little bit of fun. There's quite a bit of fun as well.
Yes, and they need to find out after reading the book.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's the first winner. I got the answer from Gaurav Mishra. He's the lucky winner for the first book.
Oh,
And
very
the
good.
answer was July
Congratulations.
7th, 1930. That was the
Mhm,
day he unfortunately passed away. The
mhm.
second question is, where was Arthur Conan Doyle born? So I'll wait for the answer. In the meantime, there's a question from Mr. Vijay Shankar. He says that mystery novels are prone to the disclosure from readers to others. So what inspired you to dabble with this genre?
Well, like I said, I love a mystery, and I'm a fan of Arthur Conan Doyle. And if he was going to, the only case he actually investigates is to do with an Indian lawyer. I just had to find out what happened and how he investigated. Did he succeed? I'm not giving away the ending because,
Yes,
we'll
please
find
no.
out. As in all mysteries, let's find out what happens, whether he's successful or not. But he does take on the full force of the Home Office. And that's quite something, and he has the whole country behind him as well, which is amazing. Media, again, I'm a journalist, but I'm free to criticize the media when they are so opportunistic. So earlier they were condemning George Adalji, this dark, mysterious,
Hmm.
oriental, debased jaw, looks like a villain, etc., etc. Suddenly, when Arthur Conan Doyle, you have the celebrity backing, oh, it changes. The mood changes immediately. And suddenly they're all saying, oh, he was a victim of his color and his race. So they changed their tune completely. And now they're all on George's side. George becomes popular even across in the Atlantic. So because his article, Arthur Conan Doyle's articles are reproduced even in the New York Times and the Washington Post. So George Adalji, suddenly this unknown solicitor from a small village near Birmingham, he becomes internationally famous. Even Nehru, who was a student in Harrow, Harrow School at the time, he writes to his father, Motilal Nehru, and he says, the papers are full of this young Indian man, George Adalji, and I'm sure he was arrested purely because he's an Indian. So, even as a young student, Nehru is following this story. So it was a big story, but, people forgot about it over the years.
So very right. Again, the second answer is from Gaurav Mishra, but unfortunately, I can't give you two copies of the same book. So it is your discretion whom you want to nominate as the winner, or
Mhm.
perhaps whosoever types it again, the same
Again,
message,
yeah.
I'll give it to them. The answer is already there on the chat box.
Oh, oh dear.
Yeah, and we have a few more minutes left, and I would request if somebody else wants to have some questions in the chat box, I'll pick it up.
Mhm.
The Times said, and you've been getting such rave reviews on your book. The Times said that Shrabani's account of how Arthur Conan Doyle set about trying to get a pardon and compensation for Adalji is in itself a fine piece of detective work. So, how do you react to such wonderful reactions and reviews that your book gets, and
Oh.
a lot of people follow your work and they write such glowing reviews on your work. So, how do you feel about it?
Oh
So,
well, of course you feel really happy. I mean, I did. I read that review. It came out on a Saturday in the weekend section, so it was really nice to see it. It was an excellent review. There were also very good reviews in the Spectator, and generally, yeah, I did. I did well with the reviews. But so it is very nice to see them and informed. I think also what also helps is informed criticism. If somebody has something to say, I think I really do take that. I feel we're all learning, and I'm a very humble person because I always feel I have something more to learn. So if somebody has something to say, I listen. If it's worthy criticism, you know what I mean. So one doesn't just want to be praised. I do like a discussion as well. Was there something I missed? Could I have done it differently? Or things like that. I think it always helps you develop.
So right. And as you just mentioned, Spectator, they wrote that it nails the nastiness of a peculiarly English scandal. I think
Mhm,
very,
mhm,
very good reviews.
yeah.
So we have the second winner with us. She's Asha Dhaima. She gets the copy of the book. And anything else that you would like the viewers to know about the book that we have missed out in talking about? Any processes that you would like to, and perhaps your experience in publishing this book with Bloomsbury that you decided to publish?
Yep. Well, Bloomsbury have been my publishers for the last two books. So they're very good. As you can see, it's just beautifully brought out. Even the other one, which I did on the First World War, That was also very beautifully brought out. And that is nice because I feel I'm one of those, I read the real book. I don't read ebooks. So I like to hold a book. And with nonfiction, you have the advantage that you can share images. So there are beautiful images and plates in this book because these are all real characters. So, you get to see what George looked like. You get to see the photograph of when he's arrested, what he looks like. There are reports about various things. So, I won't go into all the details of the book, but, it's there for you to read and to get into a different world, which was George Adalji and his father's world in this little vicarage, in 1903 in Britain, when there were so few Indians around. I mean, now you just have to sit on the tube and, half of them will be Indian. It's, you'll hear Gujarati, you'll hear Hindi, you'll hear so many languages. Can you imagine in 1903 what it was like to be an Indian in this place, when you're still a colony? So, and then you have an important position. So, as the vicar, it was a very different world, which, I hope the readers enjoy getting into. And then, of course, what happens to him, but how he's supported. I'm not somebody who's always pessimistic. So, yes, bad things happen, but also there are always, always look for the good things as well. So there are all the other people who support George Adalji. There's a campaign signed by 10,000 people. And that's not a joke in 1907. How many? They would have all been white, and they felt that miscarriage of justice had happened. They were campaigning for him. So, there's things to be taken from everybody. Of course, the police were terrible. And that, no doubts about it. They're the bad guys in the book. But that's what happens.
So, right, we have Asha Daima. She wants to ask you a question directly. Dia, please switch on her video. She is a very senior educator. Yes, Asha. Yes.
Yeah. Hello, Shrabani.
Hi,
And
Asha.
thank you, Neeta, for the book. Shrabani, I would want to know this. Like, you took 5 years to write the book, right? Well, the story was there all the time in your mind. So while writing the book and chapters and the way you presented the entire story, like you must have had some target readers in mind. Like your story, it goes for historians, it goes for people who love mysteries and investigation. It may go for nationalist readers also, and or readers who just read for fun. So as a reader, what face should I have? What side of my personality should I have? Like, what would you want to me to be like while reading? A nationalist, a historian, just for fun, or some investigating kind of mystery loving person?
Oh, I think all of these. I want somebody to be interested in a story. What is this thing that happens? It's not a well-known story. So I want people to be interested in people, unknown people who have been part of something important. I want them to know history. So I think I do feel also people who buy my books are interested in history. So I think that's a given. Or they become interested through something else. A lot of people first saw the film Victoria and Abdul and said they couldn't believe it was a true story. And then they went to my book. So sometimes that happens, that's fine. They may not have read the book earlier. They then go to the real story. So, but I never have a profile of a reader in mind. I don't. I follow the story I want to follow. And as a journalist, as a historian, I write it the way, that's my style. That's how I write it. You'll probably, see a commonality in the way I write. It's not different from book to book. The subjects are different, but there's always something similar running through the books that you can, feel, because that's me, that's my voice. And it's the story I follow, really.
Right. Okay. I'll see while reading the book which aspect of mine, which personality profile of mine overtakes me while reading, while going on this journey with this Parsee Lawyer. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
We have one last question. This is from Gaurav. And we can try to switch on his video. Yes, Gaurav. Thank you. Yes,
hi,
hi,
Shrabani. Congratulations on the book. And it seems to be a treat. And I'm looking forward to getting my hands on it and going to read it. But my question is that for a
Mhm.
budding writer,
Mhm.
how cumbersome is it for the writer to dig out age-old stories and evidences from various concerned departments and then put a storyline without any
Mhm.
biases?
Mhm. It's not easy because it's also access to these files, you see. So
Yeah.
my books tend to be, I am lucky I live in London and I have access to a lot of fabulous archives here. I have the British Library that I, spend half my life in. And then there's the National Archives, where I think I also spend half my life in. So these are two great resources. But then for each book, I go to the local libraries. For this, I went to the Staffordshire Library, the Birmingham Library, because every book has a different storyline. So I think when you say a budding writer, it is the access to material. So somebody living in India, the other day I got to, it's quite sad. Somebody doing a PhD wanted to do their PhD on Noor Inayat Khan. And they said, how do I access those? So I said, unfortunately, these files are here in London. You have to come to London. So, it may not be possible for everybody to do that. So that is one problem, in which case, find stories that are accessible to you. Because goodness, I mean, India is a mine of stories. You don't have to come to UK to find a story. There are 101 stories and more in India itself that you might be able to access more easily. So, but go with what interests you. It's always, I was a budding writer once, and I just, I just spent my own money traveling and trying to do whatever I could, to access these files. Since then, life has become easier. But if you're passionate about it, you'll find a way of getting there.
Thank you. Thank you, Gaurav, for the question. We're proud to have Major General Sudhir Kumar Dutt on the platform, and he's written that Shrabani has written a very, very well-researched plot. So how did you think about writing on this? I know you've mentioned maybe something that you've not mentioned. I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, well, it was, like I said, it was, I love writing stories about unknown characters. And this was a mystery. It's, I think, a stage in my life, I felt I'd love to get into a mystery, something to do with Arthur Conan Doyle, who I am a big fan of, and, follow what happened. How does he play Sherlock Holmes? The only time in his whole life that he investigates a mystery. And people used to write to him. People write to this Sherlock Holmes museum. Still, I've been to this Sherlock Holmes museum. A fictional character doesn't exist, Sherlock Holmes. There's a statue of him outside Baker Street. There is a museum dedicated to him, and people still write to him to solve their mystery, their problems and some things. And these letters arrive every day, and they keep them on display.
So
And
nice.
Arthur Conan Doyle used to get the letters. He used to get very annoyed because they used to come, dear Sherlock Holmes. Everything used to be addressed not to him, but to Sherlock Holmes. And it used to actually get him really annoyed. Even once when the dry cleaning came addressed to Sherlock Holmes, he said, this is it. I'm going to kill off Holmes. I've had enough of him. It's there in the book that he actually does. He kills him. He throws him off the falls. But his fans would not take it. So he had to bring him back. So, those who follow Sherlock Holmes, and I know, there are loads of Sherlock Holmes fans in India as well, they know the twists and turns of his stories. And yeah, I mean, what was there not to? It was a story that I just wanted to get my hands into.
Lovely, Shrabani. It's been such a beautiful session, and thank you so much for sparing out time and joining in from London, and as you just mentioned, London has a beautiful afternoon today, spring afternoon.
Yes, it's the Easter weekend. So yes, everybody's out in the parks and enjoying.
Yes, thank you for making our 92nd, rather 91st episode very, very interesting.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. And well, go read the book and let me know how you feel, all of you. Enjoy.
Yes. And
Thank
congratulations once again to Asha and Gaurav for winning this book. And thanks to Bluesberry and Amrita for facilitating the session to take place. Thank you. And last but not the least, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon so that you can keep on getting the regular notifications on all our wonderful interactions.